concept rather than closer to a final product. But right now feedback is super, super helpful, and we were able to create something that we were very, very proud of. So we wanted to extend the run since we were cut short by COVID through streaming, and make sure that this was available, especially since, you know, there's not much representation for people like me these days. So we wanted to make sure that this was available for as many people to see as possible. After the show, we will have the privilege of hearing from Gina Read, who is the program manager over at 1 in 10, which is just an incredible organization here in the Phoenix area. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that our queer youth are facing right now, maybe a little bit about what you can do about it. And then we will have time to answer any questions you have for myself and a couple of our cast members. But thank you so much for being here, and the support we've received for this project has just been incredible. So thank you for continuing to support. And with that, I'm going to turn us over to Alex to get us started. With that, I would like to welcome you all to Just Be, and let's start the show. Could I get lights, sound,
It is my unpopular opinion that the world would be a better place if everyone had to find themselves.
And I can hear the whispers from the crowds that we all have to do that already. So allow us to extrapolate.
The world would be a better place if everyone was born into a genderless society.
A world where instead of pink bows
and blue onesies
and parties celebrating all of the expectations
have already imparted to a fetus.
We said, welcome, little one. Let's figure this out together.
A world where instead of assaulting every infant, child, and adult with
hypersexualized, clearly defined,
binary marketing for men.
fragile femme,
where even underarm deodorant is split between starkly opposed gender norms, and if you fall somewhere between,
you best shut up
and pick the one that won't get you
cyanide,
or
yelled at,
or literally left for dead.
We let them be a human first.
A world where instead of indoctrinating them based on what is or is not proper because of what is in their pants or in their hearts, we let them live and love and question what it means
To be human, to be he,
Her. To be man.
to be woman.
to be who they are. A world where instead of telling your trans kid that they're
Just going through a phase.
or your asexual or aromantic kid that they
Just haven't found the one.
or your bisexual kid that they're
Just making it up for attention.
or your gay kid that you
You still love them, but you think their love is a sin.
or your heterosexual cis kid that you raised them right.
We said, good job, kiddo. You figured it out.
Just remember that if you learn something new that doesn't fit your label, it doesn't change who you are right now.
And it's okay to keep learning new things about yourself.
A world where instead of assigning names at birth and forever saddling a child with your hopes and dreams that never came true and shaming them if they discover it doesn't fit,
We let names grow as people do.
Adding a new syllable each time they
Discover something new about themselves.
and celebrate who they are.
and who they are becoming.
a world where instead of labeling anyone that doesn't fit inside one of two very small
boxes.
we welcomed one another.
As people.
Maybe this opinion is crazy.
Maybe this doesn't make any sense.
Maybe it's an overreaction.
Maybe I'm just a snowflake screaming at the sun the whole lot.
Maybe I'm just bitter that not everyone had to other themselves by questioning the core of their humanhood.
Like we did.
But how can I be wrong when every queer individual I've ever met was
More human,
More vulnerable. More authentic.
more accepting, more loving.
more at peace with themselves for having to find who they were their own way?
Couldn't we all use a little more soul searching?
Couldn't we all use a little more authentic love?
A little more humanity?
Couldn't we all use a little more us?
Lights and sound. Sound.
Yeah, I think it's time for a smoke break.
Lights.
Wait.
Lights.
Before I go, I should say that the smoking motif will make sense a little bit later on. It's a narrative device. Still with me? Okay? Good. Cool. Awesome. Lights! Go!
Lights and sound. Lights.
Is that a girl? Is that a boy? Do they play with dolls or do they play with toys? I have to know the pink or blue.
Adam, right?
Yeah, that's me. You're
Dead name censored here.
right?
Yeah. Yep, that's me. You're one of the new sales folks.
Yep. First thing on the phones.
Nice!
Oh, is it that time already?
Oh, we still got 2 minutes if we take the stairs.
Oh, hey, I forgot to ask. Do you use the pronouns?
Oh, I prefer them, but I'm not really ready for all that just yet. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is the first place I've been able to be out from the start.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they've been pretty cool about it. Is there a different name you prefer?
Maybe in the future, but I'm not really ready for all that just yet.
Cool. No worries. Can I follow you in? I can get a little lost around here.
Not at all. This place is a bit of a maze at first.
Lights. Sound. Lights. Sound.
Well,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maybe Stewart. I am a multi-hyphenate theater artist that happens to identify as a trans-masked, non-binary, asexual, pan-gray romantic individual.
and I'll be your guide this evening. Before we really get going, I'd like to welcome you to Just Be. The goal tonight is to set aside our conditioned societal notions of gender and sexuality and step fully into the idea of a genderless society. If that's concerning or disconcerting to you, good. Welcome to the tension your queer friends feel every moment of every day. And if you're sitting here thinking, well, I don't have any of those, give it a year or two and try not to be such an asshole about it. You'd be amazed what a few poorly timed comments can do to someone's sense of safety around you. Now, before we really get started, I do have some housekeeping to get through. Firstly, please make sure your phones and noisemakers of all types are turned off and put away And please, no video recordings or photos during this performance. The things we will be covering tonight are immensely personal. And while myself and my collaborators have chosen to share our stories with you in this space, we ask that you respect our need to control how that information is divulged to the world. Secondly, this is not a safe space. This is a brave space. While I sincerely hope my queer family in the audience and on stage finds this experience a comfortable and uplifting one, we are not here to sit back and be comfortable. We are here as real, flawed, beautiful people seeking change in a world that has been less than friendly to many of us. There may be moments you feel uncomfortable or triggered by the material presented, and that's okay. If you feel the need to take a breather and step out, we want to support you in that. But outside of the need for self-care, I ask that you sit in your discomfort for the next hour and listen. I also ask that you set aside all notions of what gender and sexuality are supposed to be tonight, and allow yourself and those on stage to just be. Allow yourself to question what gender and sexuality mean to you, not to the world around you. The stories we present are our stories, and we encourage you to focus on the similarities, not the differences. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Bridge Initiative for supporting this production, and to Tempe Center for the Arts for kindly hosting us tonight.
Sound.
Yeah, I think we need another smoke break before this next part.
Lights and sound. Lights.
Do you want to go first? 'Cause I'm happy to wait. That just to be hard.
Wow, I really need to quit these things. They do nothing for my anxiety.
Same. I mostly just vape now, unless I'm in the middle of a really stressful show. Don't smoke, kids. It isn't worth it.
Show?
Yeah, I do theater.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm actually a musician. I have a gig coming up this weekend.
Nice. So, how's your week been?
It's been okay. Last night was amazing.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so I went to the bar last night and I kept getting hit on by a bunch of lesbians all night, which, like, good for them and all, but I kept having to go to the bathroom and shove my tits further back in my binder because it was causing major dysphoria.
Ah, fuck, man, that sucks. Binders are the best and worst things on the planet.
For real. So I'm at the bar and this chick came over and we hit it off, and I wasn't sure if she thought I was a lesbian or like what, but we hit it off. So I ended up going back to her place, and she started doing stuff, and I was confused, and then it finally hit me that she totally thought I had a dick, and I was like, hey, sorry, that won't work with me, and so I had to be like, fuck, I'm gonna have to take the bus home because she didn't know. But then she goes, oh, I'm sorry, no problem. It was like so affirming and just amazing, like just to be gendered appropriately off the bat. I'm just like on cloud 9.
That is amazing, dude. I'm seriously so happy for you.
Run.
Lights. Lights and sound.
Shit, isn't somebody supposed to be on stage right now?
Hi. Okay. I never thought I would tell my story, any part of it. In fact, I vehemently swore to people I hold in very high esteem that I wouldn't. You see,
Sound.
I'm a writer, and for most of my life, I felt that my story could be found in the characters and stories I have written and will write. telling my story isn't exactly easy for me, in case you haven't figured that out yet. For a while, it was impossible for me to do it safely. I like to hide behind my characters, letting the little pieces of me be exposed through a prism rather than a photograph. But in May of 2019, I had an experience that forced me to face what my identity means in today's world. And while that experience should have made me go deeper into hiding than I already was, I have never been one to conform. Telling me you can't is the quickest way to get me to do exactly that or die trying.
Okay. The next part of our story is
Just cut to the next smoke break.
Okay, yes, it's a smoke break. With our dear friend Adam. It's a couple weeks after we last saw him.
Lights and sound?
Where's my story? Oh my god!
Lights.
Wait, what?
I'm hungry.
Food sounds good.
Sound.
Fries.
Sushi!
That is
Sushi!
right.
Sushi!
Speaking of the fries, we can get the sushi on the company dime, but we have 2 more hours to make the calls.
Earn it. We have to earn the free lunch. I don't make the rules. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules.
Sounds less and less free.
Dude, I am so sick of sleeping on a park bench.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. I've been sleeping in the park for 3 days.
Dude. What the fuck? What happened?
I was staying with my sister while I recovered from the whole cancer thing. And now that I'm working again, I promised I would move out by this weekend. I thought I had an apartment lined up, but the people scammed me. So, and it wasn't really safe for me to go back to my sister's. So, yeah.
Well, dude, I have been looking for a roommate. Desperately. I mean, it's a long story, but basically, I have to find somebody to take the other room by the end of the month, or I will also be sleeping on a park bench. I mean, why do you think I have been so out of it this whole week?
Wait, for real?
No, I am dead serious. And yes, it's out in Tempe, but hey, we could carpool to and from work if that would work for you.
Holy shit, that sounds amazing. Do you have my phone number?
Oh, I don't, but oh fuck, we gotta go inside.
Yeah, I'll put my number in. I'll walk up. I'll text you the details.
Lights.
Adam moved in with me 3 days later, but Adam has the same propensity for bad luck that I have. And not long after, he got into a terrible car accident with his girlfriend, Lynn. Yes, that one from the bar. Called me up one night, said he needed to talk, said that he needed some support.
Lights.
Hey, what's up?
Sound.
So, I got a call from a friend back in Portland. Fuck, it's been a hell of a day. So I got a call that my best friend from high school OD'd last night. They didn't make it, and I had to call their parents. And it's been... yeah.
Holy fuck, dude. I'm so sorry.
Honestly, I'm just really numb right now. But Lynn is gonna take me up to Portland tomorrow for the funeral. She's got some family up there, so she's gonna use it as an excuse to spend a few weeks with them. I'll stay there for a week and then loop down to California to see my mom, because she probably won't make it to Christmas. And then I'll take a Greyhound back here. I'll still pay rent and everything. I just wanted you to know.
Thank you for telling me. If you ever need anything, look, I know you have good people, but I'm here too.
I know. Thank you.
Lights and sound.
Day 1, May 17th.
Hey, just checking in. Wanted to make sure that you were got there safely.
Hey, yeah, here safe. Funeral was beautiful. celebrating for a few days on the beach like you would have wanted.
Good. I'm glad you're with good people.
Me too. Hey, headed down to California today. Line?
Should be there sometime.
Should be there sometime tomorrow. Probably won't have much service though, so I'll just let you know when I get there safely.
Sounds good. How are you?
Hanging in. Got a safe phone battery.
Day 8.
A transgender woman who was attacked in Dallas last month has been found dead May 19, 2019. Malaysia Booker spoke at a rally in Dallas last month after she was attacked in a parking lot. On Saturday, she was found dead. At a news conference, Major Vincent Weddington said that officers found Miss Booker shortly before 7 a.m. on Saturday, lying face down in the street, deceased from homicidal violence.
Hey, just checking in. Did you make it to your mom safely?
Malaysia had a heart of gold. She didn't want to have to endure all of this tragic stuff, but she wanted people to pay attention to the injustice.
Day 9.
The third black transgender woman killed by gun violence in a week shows an alarming trend. In the early hours of Sunday, May 19th, Michelle Tamika Washington, 40, and a longtime advocate for the transgender community, died after being shot several times at the Franklinville neighborhood of North Philadelphia.
Hey, yeah, super shitty cell service out here. Probably won't be able to respond much till I'm headed back.
All right, stay safe.
Anytime I get those phone calls or text messages about a trans death, it's extremely hard. But even more so when you realize it's someone you've been friends with for 20 years. Your memory will live and light will shine on through us.
Hey, waiting to get on my bus. Should be there within 24 to 48 hours, depending on how many times the bus breaks down. My phone probably won't make it the whole way, though. It's gonna die.
Hey, no worries. Just in case you can't get a hold of me, I left your key underneath the mat.
Day 15.
A 19-year-old man from Detroit has been charged with killing 2 gay men and a transgender woman in an attack prosecutors say was motivated by their LGBT+ identity. He is facing 3 counts of first-degree murder in the shooting of Alunte Davis, 21, Paris Cameron, 20, and Timothy Blanchard, 20. Davis and Blanchard were gay men. Cameron was a trans woman. Prosecutors say that 2 more people were injured in the May 25th shooting but survived their injuries.
Hey, hoping you're safe. Just wanted to check in, but I know your phone is probably dead.
This case illustrates the mortal danger faced by members of Detroit's LGBTQ community, including transgender women. Fair Michigan President Alana McGuire told the Detroit Press.
Day 16.
How go the travels? Adam, you okay?
Day 17.
Adam!
Day 18.
You should be here by now.
Day 19.
He should be here by now.
It's been 5 days since I heard.
Did something happen to him?
Day 20.
I hope he's okay.
It's been 6 days
What if
since...
he's hurt?
Day 21.
Why isn't he here yet?
It's
Why-
been 7
Something
days.
happened? Day 22.
Why isn't he back
8
yet?
days.
Another black trans woman has been killed in Dallas June 1st, 2019. Police said the body of Chanel Lindsay was found Saturday in Dallas with obvious signs of homicidal violence, according to police.
This is just devastating. This was a person I have never seen mad. I can't imagine anyone hurting her.
What if he's
Day
hurt?
24.
It's been 10 days.
Day
It's
26.
been 12 days.
A black trans woman was killed after she went to confront someone from Facebook June 5th. Chanel Skurlock, 23, was found just after midnight when Robeson County Sheriff's Office deputies arrived after receiving reports of gunfire in the area. She had been shot. The police, local media, and Skurlock's mother identified her as a gay man, misgendered her, shared pictures of her presenting as male, and dead-named her in media reports.
You lived your life as you wanted. I'm proud of you for being unapologetically correct about your feelings and expectations of you.
Day 32.
It's been
What if he's
18
hurt?
days.
Day 33.
It's been 19 days.
What if something happened?
Day 34.
What if he's hurt?
Police identified transgender woman found slain in D.C. suburb June 18th.
Zoe Spears didn't want to go back to Eastern Avenue.
I don't want to die, Miss Bud.
Arlene Budd recalled Spears telling her about the fear she had of returning to her apartment on the street straddling the district in Maryland.
I don't want to go back home.
Spears said she had witnessed her friend Ashanti Carmen's killing in March and was afraid that returning to where the fatal shooting occurred would lead her to the same end.
On Thursday, Spears was found dead in the street, gunned down just blocks away from the scene of Carmen's slaying.
Day 35.
What if he-
Lights and sound. I was lucky. Not very lucky, but lucky nonetheless. The day I went missing, I was kicked off my Greyhound with nothing but my dead cell phone because a handful of strangers took offense at my existence, and the driver claimed I was aggravating them. I didn't even know exactly where we were. I had no choice but to hitchhike my way back toward my mother in California until I finally found someone willing to let me use their phone to call her. She sent someone to pick me up. When I got back to her place, I ran into my ex-fiance. We were together before I came out as trans, and things didn't end well. The interaction is still a blur. Hurtful things were said, but honestly, I don't remember most of it. Next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital and I was told I attempted suicide. I remained hospitalized with no access to a phone until 21 days after I told Maybe I would be home. Today, I'm about as safe as any trans person living below the poverty line in this country, which is to say, not very.
Lights.
In the months leading up to Adam's disappearance, I had to become increasingly uncomfortable ignoring my gender identity. I had convinced myself to come out a number of times, only to reconvince myself and not to, as to avoid being an inconvenience. But in the 21 days he was missing, as news story after news story after news story after news story of trans murders came forward, it became truly unbearable. I felt like I couldn't talk about this constant pain I was in, or the panic I had clawing at my throat, because no one would understand how or why this applied to me. The next week I came out publicly, and I have been loudly advocating for my trans community ever since. Despite everything, coming out was like that moment in The Wizard of Oz where everything changes from stark black and white to stunning, vibrant, beautiful color. For the first time, I felt seen and known. For the first time, I could look in the mirror and see myself looking back. For the first time, I could just be and learn to love the real me. But a lot had to happen before I got there.
For much of my life, I truly believed that I was the source of everything wrong with the world, and I hated myself for it. There are plenty of reasons for that, some of which we'll get into later, but for now, that's all you need to know. I hated myself so completely that at some point, I just totally disconnected from life. I would be somewhere floating outside of my body, watching a puppet of myself on autopilot, engaging with the world and
around me, or even with myself. And I lived as nothing more than a silent observer with just enough charisma that no one noticed how empty my every interaction was. I was floating through life without a tether, and there was no reason for me to fight. In fact, there were quite a few compelling reasons not to.
I grew up in a home of abuse and trauma. By the time I turned 19, I had moved 12 times through 6 states across the country. between the constant uprooting, the performed perfection I was forced to put on as a pastor's daughter, and the effects of PTSD from years of mental, physical, and sexual abuse, I had all but entirely isolated myself. What friends I had were only surface-level acquaintances who never saw anything but a mask kept securely in place.
But in college, I found theater. And for the first time, I had a reason to connect. The people I met were not people that would let me get away with skimming the surface. These were the people that loved me and supported me and stood by me until I learned how to love myself. And these connections that I forged, they became my found family to this day. And they were my first exposure to my queer community.
As these people slowly pulled me out of my shell and showed me what real love looked like, I started reaching out farther and farther until, after months of struggling to feel anything outside of my nightly flashbacks and panic attacks and growing increasingly distressed by how disconnected I was from myself and everyone around me with seemingly no way back, my friends finally convinced me to start therapy.
It was there, in therapy, that I learned a name for this floating autopilot setting my brain had been stuck in for nearly 10 years.
Dissociation!
Everyone experiences dissociation at one point or another. It's one of the brain's natural responses in times of distress or trauma. But because my trauma had never appropriately processed and I had no other coping mechanisms, this convenient temporary defense became a debilitating chronic condition. I couldn't connect to myself or my surroundings. I had never explored who I was or who I wanted to be because the neural pathways that connected me back to myself had all but completely disappeared. And I couldn't get back to me. Outlining the many and extensive reasons why my dissociation became so severe is impossible, as I myself am still unraveling the trauma. But there are two primary causes. The first was on a slow burn from my childhood to early adulthood as my parents' starling marriage of 25 years slowly imploded like a dying star. I was used as the scapegoat.
Anything at all that would come between them would somehow be my fault. Until the most consistent comment I heard from my parents was that I was tearing this family apart. And by the age of 8 years old, I believed it. The second was an abusive relationship that lasted 5 years in which I was continuously mentally and physically abused, harassed, and raped by the only person I was allowed to interact with who was my age. 2 years after I finally escaped from him, he committed suicide the night before I turned 18. After the funeral, his friend sent me a fake suicide note, blaming me for his death.
Hold. I'd like to run that one more time, Cassandra. And I just want to give you the note. I'm not sure if you were there when we first set this. Just a little intention thing, where this is claiming.
I heard from my parents was that I was tearing this family apart. And by the age of 8 years old, I believed it. Second is an abusive relationship that lasted 5 years in which I was continuously mentally and physically abused, harassed, and raped by the only person my age I was allowed to interact with. 2 years after I finally escaped from him, he committed suicide the night before I turned 18. After the funeral, his friend sent me a fake suicide note, blaming me for his death.
Spent a year in intensive therapy, fighting to reprocess my traumas and learn to feel again. But even after I learned enough tools to begin grounding myself in reality, the guilt, shame, and hatred I still harbored for myself left me convinced I wasn't worthy of wholeness. I truly believed I deserved to be nothing more than a shadow of a human, and couldn't see anything in myself worth exploring. About 2 years later, I suffered a terrifying relapse in which I dissociated so badly that there are 2 weeks of my life I still can't remember. This pushed my friends to push me to join a recovery program. Over time, this program helped me face my painful past, find peace, and learn to love myself enough to explore who I really was.
When I finally gave myself permission to do research about other people who experience life in similar ways, I came across the word asexual. The first time I heard the word asexual, my friends used it mockingly to describe my reaction to my other friends describing their sex lives. And in my disconnected state, asexual never meant anything other than a punchline.
When I finally looked it up, I was greeted by thousands of individuals that shared my same aversion to sex. This one search opened up a whole new world of gender and sexual identities, and the deeper I dug into the hole, the more and more validated I felt in my own humanity. I wasn't alone. I wasn't a freak. I belonged. And as contradictory as it might seem, even my non-binary, don't put me in a box, you fucking prick-ass self, rejoiced to finally find a label that fit. I could finally communicate with a community, a global community of people that shared my ungenderedness and commiserate with other asexuals that sometimes experienced romantic attraction, but struggled to find a partner who wanted a romantic relationship without the sexual element our society praises so highly.
I could learn how to find a masculine-leaning form of androgyny from other trans-masked, non-binary individuals who felt most authentic while presenting this way, but without feeling like a binary man. And yes, it was a vast new language, and I had so much to learn, but I finally felt at home. And I found my true form and my true self as I dove headfirst into my queer community. I was able to divorce myself from those stories that society had always told me, and I could learn how to ignore societal norms. And I could learn how to take off that mask society and trauma had cemented to my face and finally focus on myself.
I started recognizing what I was doing because I was supposed to be doing it, and what I was doing because it felt right. I took the time to separate my raw impulses from the stories that I had constructed around them. After experimenting with several forms of presentation, I started trying them out in public, using the input of an external source to find a form of gender presentation that not only made me feel comfortable, but helped others see me in the way I saw myself. That I realized that so many of my body issues and my problems with clothes and makeup from an early age, my disdain for how the world looked at me, was all based on what everyone else was constructing for what the story of presentation meant to them. rather than how I actually felt about it. And while much of our society still has a problem noticing or accepting me, I am finally telling my own story for myself and sharing that story with the world. So, I'd like to invite you to share your story. Earlier today, I asked you to notice the similarities in our stories rather than the differences.
We also made a statement that the world would be a better place if everyone had to find themselves.
That's why I would like to invite you to share in this brave space that we've created tonight. If I could get the house lights up, that would be awesome. Perhaps. House lights? Thank you. In the meantime, what I would like from you all is to engage a little bit with the text of this story. And that might look like talking about some of the sensations that you felt while listening to this story, whether it's tension or release or catharsis. Maybe you have tension in your shoulders that just kind of hung there. We'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear any memories that this show has brought up for you. Or we'd love to hear about a time where you experienced a lack of privilege. And that can be either how that moment felt or what that moment was. If I could get my projector set up, Alex, and if we could clear a little bit, there will be a link up at the top. If you sign into that on your phone, you will be able to anonymously answer these questions. So you can either answer here, or we'd love for you to talk about it with each other as well. And we'll take about 10 minutes doing this. And while this is happening, the team up here is going to do a little bit of stuff that will make sense in about 10 minutes. Cool? All right. Could I get some music? And if we could get the stage lights down. So our 10-minute timer is going to start now, and we will do our thing. right, friends, we're going to kind of bring it back in here for a moment. Alex, if you could go ahead and take out the sound for me. Perfect. So thank you all so much for sharing with us. Alex, if you could just kind of slowly scroll down for us, that would be wonderful. And then for my folks on stage, before we start scrolling, if you want to come and stand to the sides so that we can watch as well. Okay, friends. I'm going to let my actors sit with this for a moment, let everybody sit with this for a moment. And when we come back, we are going to bring your stories into our story. Because I don't think a writer/director should ever be the only person whose story is getting told. The way that I've structured this play, I wanted to incorporate the stories of the people on stage with me, but I also want to incorporate yours. So give us just a moment, and then we will do that.
Separate?
Cut. He said I was daft.
Should I cut myself in half?
Too young to know. Daft.
I can feel the tension in my jaw.
Too young to know.
Disastrous results.
Chose to be gay. He didn't get.
Should I cut myself in half?
Parents.
Tension.
Cheers.
I'm not here to teach. Sound. Projector. When you all are ready.
Thank you for holding space with us here tonight.
Lights and sound.
Thank you for sharing your stories with us and honoring us with these parts of yourselves.
Thank you for taking the time to listen, not just to us, but to yourselves.
Thank you for allowing us to be vulnerable with you and allowing yourselves to be vulnerable with us.
But most of all, thank you for joining with us in this celebration of what it means to be human.
I spent so many sleepless nights trying to figure out how I was going to end this piece, and if I'm being honest, I just couldn't. I guess that's the downside to a work based off of your own story. It's not finished yet, but luckily for all of you, I think I found the ending during a workshop of one of my plays.
So, I'd like to close this out with the words of Robbie, a character from All the Wrong Places, a play I wrote in the final stages of the story I've shared tonight. This monologue is based on the emotions I always feel when one of my stories has been shared, and I think they summarize it much better than I could.
Wow, okay. Yeah, this is really happening. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for coming tonight. Really.
You know, I've spent the last week trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to say. But honestly, I still don't have it.
This exhibit is titled Just Be.
I never intended to share any of this with anyone. I didn't think anyone would care about my stupid little scribbles. I guess because I Never really thought anyone would give a shit about me.
Oh, fuck! I just said shit in this fancy gallery!
Anyway, back in high school, we had to draw self-portraits as an assignment. Our art teacher was really cool and wanted us to draw them the way we saw ourselves, who we really were. Most of the kids didn't get it. They drew versions of themselves that they wanted to be.
I drew a succulent.
For a long time, most of my life, I was convinced that people wouldn't like the real me. I tried to keep my mom happy, try hiding in school, try to fly under the radar. I was convinced that as soon as people discovered the real me, they'd kick me to the curb. And I was right. They did. It's never taken long for people to figure me out. But as much as I wanted to, I couldn't hide who I was.
I ran around the world trying to lose myself.
But everywhere I went, there I was. Still looking back in the mirror and hating what I saw.
Still screaming, I don't want to be fixed, I just want to be!
I don't want to be fixed, I just want to be.
I don't want to be fixed, I just want to be!
I don't want to be fixed, I just want to be! Into the metaphorical void.
Acceptance is a hard thing to find.
Succulents never seem to have that problem.
What I've learned is acceptance isn't something you look for. It doesn't come from somewhere or someone else. The only person that had to accept me, the only person that had to let me just be,
was me. And I don't have to apologize for existing any more than these succulents do. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry I said fuck.
Let's go!
I can't see now. I'll find my way around.
All right, looks like we are good to go. So I am so grateful for everyone that came today. And I would like to introduce to you Gina Read, who is the program manager over at 1 in 10. Gina Read, can you introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about 1 in 10 does?
Certainly, I will be very happy to. So 1 in 10 has been around for about 30 years now. We serve LGBTQ plus youth and young adults ages 11 to 24 by providing empowering social and service programs that promote self-expression, self-acceptance, leadership development, which is really important, and healthy life choices. We do this via our downtown youth center, 14 satellite locations around the state, and online. We also have a workforce development program. We put on name change clinics 4 times a year. And we have the largest LGBTQ plus leadership camp in the world. And during the pandemic, we also started a parents group.
Amazing. And how did you find yourself working with 1 in 10?
Well, I applied 30 years ago at another organization to work with young people, passed all the background checks and all of that, and they loved me. And at the very end, I thought I better reveal, because I was the editor of an LGBT newspaper. I thought, well, I better let them know that I'm a lesbian. And so the minute I did that, they were like, sorry, you can't work with youth. So I heard that Toby Ervader, who was doing her master's degree, was starting a group specifically for LGBTQ youth. So I went and volunteered, and I was with them as a volunteer, and we didn't hire our first paid staff member until about year 12 or 13. And then I left for a few years and then came back as a program manager 9 years ago.
That's incredible, truly. So kind of one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit with you was what representation means, especially for our queer youth right now. You know, we don't get to see ourselves much on the stage or on screen or even on the page in books. But, you know, as someone who works more with younger folks than I do, I'd love to hear just anything you have to say about kind of the importance of that representation.
Well, it actually was the reason that 1 in 10 was formed, was because there wasn't any representation. In the 90s, if you were a gay man, you were effeminate. If you were a lesbian, you were going to be lonely and have a sad life. And if you identified as trans, you were probably the serial killer. So it was all of these stereotypes. And so I think that's what's so important about getting different stories told and different perspectives told, is that it essentially validates who they are and it doesn't limit them to stereotypes. So it's very important.
Absolutely. I fully agree. You know, having the chance just to be on stage with this was really very life-changing for me. But the thing that I think has stuck with me most from this production is all of the notes that I got from family members, parents, and queer kids themselves who came to see the show when we were live, just talking about how, like, really the words escape me. There were so many conversations happening around these people seeing themselves on stage for the first time. And that was really why I think this show is so important right now. And speaking of right now, what would you say some of the most common struggles that youth are facing right now would be?
Well, first, I want to just congratulate you on the play and everybody that worked on it, because I felt it was really, really well done. I mean, I saw so many of our different stories that could apply to a lot of our youth. So that's, it was amazing. It really was amazing. And I loved watching it. I think that all youth, not just LGBTQ youth, but all youth right now, because of the pandemic, are suffering from anxiety. I mean, they live in a scary world. Let's face it. I mean, global warming, all these things happening, it's horrible. LGBTQ youth, though, also have more of a feeling, I think, of isolation, because straight youth, it's easy to find other people that identify the way that you do, and most of the adults in your life are going to identify that way. But for our LGBTQ youth, it's much harder to find, particularly now, after this pandemic. I know that a lot of people are afraid to go out, and so they feel very isolated. I think the second biggest thing, because I deal with it the most at 1 in 10, is tonight in Maricopa County, 1,200 kids will be on the street. So 18 to 24-year-olds will be on the street. And although LGBTQ kids should only account for 8% of them, in Maricopa County, they account for 40%.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you know, full disclosure, my sibling has benefited greatly from 1 in 10 services. That's one of the reasons I wanted to partner with you in this. Both myself and my younger sibling are trans and have both experienced homelessness and a lot of really rough stuff. And while I was too old at the time to benefit from 1 in 10, my sibling went through the program with you and benefited greatly. And it looks like we have some 1 in 10 alumni also here in the chat and behind the scenes, which is awesome. So thank you so much for everything that you do and everything that 1 in 10 has done and all of the, decades of work that you've put into making that possible. My last question, since we do need to move on, is how can our viewers find and support 1 in 10? What are some things that they can do to support you or just to be better allies?
I think it's just being aware. Number one, giving out 1 in 10 information to youth that need it or parents that are struggling that need it. And then I think it's also being aware of what's going on down at the legislature and speaking out. Because unfortunately, the people that speak out are not us. It's not the majority of us that are watching this. We think, oh, everything's going to be fine. Well, it's not. You need to speak up.
Absolutely. And on that note, for some of our viewers who may not be aware, there is quite a large amount of anti-trans specifically, but also anti-queer in general legislation that's happening right now. And obviously we have our big legislation matters that we're having to deal with and fight against right now. But one of the reasons I wanted to do this panel now was just to make sure that we're not kind of forgetting our trans and queer brothers and sisters as, and neithers as we move forward to protect each other and be better allies. Now, I know we have Bridget up, so I'd love to have Bridget introduce yourself a little bit. So while Bridget works through some technical problems right now, Bridget was one of the people you did not get to see on stage today. Unfortunately, Bridget was unable to be present for our recording of Just Be, but was a huge part of our process and originally played the role that you saw Autumn in today as Adam and an ensemble member. Did I see that you... Not quite. Okay. So Bridget was incredible. And I believe that's all that we have here so far. We may also hear from Rachelle later. Rachelle was visible in our recording today and did an incredible job jumping in as a swing. She learned the show in 2 days, which was incredible when we lost one of our actors in the midst of our pandemic. So this whole process was fraught with a lot of people, coming in, coming out. We had understudies, we had people everywhere. Do I hear you there, Bridget?
Yes,
I
think you do. All right, let me get that video up. Hi there, welcome from my car.
So you are coming to us from work. I know that. Thank you so much.
No problem. Just slipped out of the office to be a part of this. I was listening to the live stream while waiting for the sands of time to drip down the hourglass. I am so glad that you invited me to be part of this. That way I could so that would give me an opportunity to gush about how much I loved being a part of the process. And unfortunately, I had gotten COVID on the literally the day right after our opening night. So I was there for opening, but the rest of the run I could not participate out of concern and safety for everybody else. Luckily, the illness didn't do much of a job on me. So but I had to miss out.
Yeah, well, and that was honestly one of the most heartbreaking experiences I've ever had in theater.
Yeah.
Because, you were there, you were backstage, you made it there, and we knew that you weren't feeling great. So we ran a rapid and it popped 20 minutes before we were supposed to be on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were I count myself so lucky, Bridget, that I had you, that I had everybody in this cast and team. It was incredible. but just to have the strength within our team to know that no matter what happened, no matter what COVID threw at us, what the world threw at us, we would move forward. Like just knowing that Autumn was ready and would step in.
And what a good job. Oh my gosh. Watching the knowing that Autumn came in at like the absolute, like, you know, 11th hour on that and just killing it, absolutely killing it.
Just like, well, and Rachelle too, and everyone was so ready to just make it happen.
It made my heart ache just to see everybody. It was really good.
It was such a good time. So let me see, what questions do I have for you? Because I'm not seeing any in our chat yet. And I do want to just make it clear for everybody that we have out there, if you have any questions for me, for Bridget, for Gina, we are all here to answer any questions that you might have. But yeah, so I guess my first question would be like, what was the most challenging part of the process for you?
I think honestly it was driving across town for rehearsals. It was an incredibly easy process to be a part of. Maybe is an excellent director. If any of you get a chance to be in a production that they're putting on, I highly recommend being a part of it. Every day there was a check-in. Every time that there was no doubt we could just stop and talk something through if something felt uncomfortable, or if somebody was having a really rough day and needed extra accommodations, whether it's whether it was a stress thing or a family issue, or just needing a little bit of extra help for, their neurodivergence. It was amazing, just top notch. Everybody was really into digging into the emotional core of the play. And even though there are some extremely heavy topics being presented, because the space was so open and inviting and just like the trust was there, even delving into, heavier things and delving into trauma and sharing trauma with each other to get a feel for, the character. It was supernatural how comfortable everything felt.
Yeah, well, and thank you so much for saying all of that. But I think a large part of it also had to do with our team. Like, this was not just me making it comfortable and safe. It takes a room of safe people and vulnerable people to create the kind of safety that we all felt. And then Gina has a question. Let me see. So this one's for me. We had a wonderful cast. How did we choose such a great group? And really, I just got very, very lucky is what happened. I knew about half of our cast and had worked with about half of our cast prior to this project. I always like to have a couple of people that I have worked with just so I know that I've got like my anchors for a cast. But especially as I've, done my anti-racism work and really learned about where my blind spots are, I've become much more conscious of that bias in my casting. And this is the first time I've had the opportunity to fully cast a show with that knowledge of those blind spots. So I wanted, I've always been very careful and wanted to reach outside of my circle when casting, and have at least a few unfamiliar faces that are new people to me to work with. But specifically for this show, I really wanted to focus on having a diverse cast and a cast that was new people to me, as much as possible. So it really kind of naturally came together because I had to just work with what was put in front of me. That was the challenge that I gave myself. And we had some really incredible people show up. We had you, Bridget, we had Bray, we had, all of the people that we saw on stage today. absolutely kicking ass came and kicked ass in auditions. And I was like, I ended up with 2 full casts that I had to choose between. And I'm grateful that I chose the one that I did. Moving on to some other questions. So, Bridget, I'll let you kind of take this how you will, since, and maybe you'll want to talk a little bit about kind of the role selection process. But Gina is asking, what drew you to the role that you played?
Well, part of the process was meeting in Maybe's living room and reading the parts. Everybody, the way that the script is built, we joked that it was a one-person show, but with a cast of many people, because we are all different aspects of Maybe, their personality, but also their memory and their memory of Adam. And so when we were reading, we all took a turn playing different aspects, and there's just some things about being, I like to think that when I was playing the parts of Maybe and at Adam, I was taking control of their source of righteous anger. That's what I had brought to it. And for the Adam, just trying to do this real person that exists, a lot of just at least a decent job of not making him, just looking genuine. But there were just parts about that where it's just like, from, there are parallels in Maybe's story that are in my own life, and it makes me want to go back in time and take care of young Maybe and that younger part of them, and protect them from the world that's so sharp and cold at the same time.
Yeah. So to kind of for those in our audience and those who may watch later who aren't familiar with the process that we kind of went through, just to expand on that a little bit. The script that we started with in this process was essentially a one-person show with a movement ensemble that had very few, if any, lines. Through this process, one of the major changes that we made was splitting that narrative up amongst our cast members. And some of those splits I made myself, but every single scene we would go through, I would assign the sections to each cast member, and then we would rotate and we would rotate and we would rotate. So every single person in the show said every line in the show at least once. And that allowed me to hear those lines in different ways than I had ever heard them. But it also allowed me to hear the different elements that people would pick out of those lines, and kind of based on either who had the strongest connection to those lines, or who I felt took those lines in the same direction they were written and intended to hit. That was really how those lines were divided. And there were, Bridget, you were one of the ones who ended up arm wrestling for a line.
Yes, we arm wrestled for it, and then we did the honorable thing, and we were like, actually, we could both do it, and it's one of my favorite lines. I know that was a question asked of what was the favorite line, and even though the whole script is beautiful, the one that sticks in my heart is fuck, I just said shit in this fancy gallery. So LAMAR and we arm wrestled for it, and then it was I think LAMAR won, but he was very he's very, very much a gentleman, and was like, we could split it, and then Maybe approved, and it hits every time. I love it. It's such a good light part of the play.
It's one of my favorite lines too. And apparently ALEKS has footage of this, so we may need to share that as a behind the scenes at some point.
Incredible.
But yeah, so Brenda asks, does Adam know he was represented on stage? And this is actually a question that I've kind of struggled with a lot, because knowing Adam and knowing where he ended up, I think the way that I tell his story in this is very much my story and not his. So he is aware that he is in the play. He is aware that he has a large part in the play. But we had a conversation when I was very early in the development of this, that what I was really trying to capture was how he affected my life rather than trying to tell his story, especially because he's a musician. He tells his own story every day. So that's why I've changed his name in the script. His name in real life is not Adam. It's not even close to Adam, but what I've kind of treated the story in the script is, this is very much my telling of the impact this had on my life rather than me trying to tell his story for him, because I don't think it's appropriate for me to tell his story if that's the point of me telling it. So he is aware, but he has not come to see it. He has not read it. And we kind of wanted to keep our stories separate in that way. It wasn't something we wanted to collaborate on because we felt that this was very much me telling my story rather than trying to tell his, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I will loop back and answer what my favorite line of dialogue is, because it actually changed. Mine used to be the same as Bridget's, which was, oh fuck, I just said shit in this fancy gallery. But this time, just because of how Sam read this line, in that kind of built-in curtain speech that everybody starts together and then it drops to just Sam, there's that moment, and I'm trying to remember the exact line, but it's really not even a line, it's a silence that has become my favorite moment. And it's this moment when Sam almost challenges the audience to sit in about 10 straight seconds of silence. And those 10 straight seconds of just existing, I think, are what this play really is a space to live, even if it's uncomfortable and even if, you know, there's not much to say. There is a space here for us to be uncomfortable and still be ourselves. So it looks like, oh no, we lost Bridget. It looks like we are just about out of time, and it looks like we've gotten through all of our questions. So I just want to say thank you again so much to everybody here and everybody who watches this later. This has been an incredible opportunity, and I am so excited to see kind of the next steps on our journey with this show. It'll be back. It'll be a while. There's a lot of rewrites and things that will be changing in the next version, just like there were in this version. But I am so grateful for all of the support that we've received throughout this entire process. And thank you for coming today.